Okay, we're live.
All right, namaste.
Okay.
All right, well, you find us here in our Ethan barn, an alternative to where we normally meet. Are we on, Satas?
You are, it's just this turned off.
Okay.
They're
just,
here either.
just for you.
Obviously, Ellie made it home too.
Yeah, obviously, you're here. The evidence is right before us. So, yeah, we're here because we've had some remarkable snowfall. Maybe global warming, solar vortex, some other mix of magic. But I know Satchmai was complaining that we would be leaving before there was any snow. So
It's pretty good.
She got her fill. So we're here. Okay, so this is our second to last. Tuesday night we'll also do a Satsang program, but this is for all those who are out there who are in the other parts of the world, especially in Europe, can join in. I have a theme I wanted to go through, and this has to do with the nature of our work, the nature of this work, and getting clarity perhaps about the particular uniqueness of what we're doing. And what I'd like to do as a basis is bring forward some quotes from a book that I have been diving deeply into it, which is Sri Aurobindo's Letters of Yoga. You may not know this, but these are a collection of correspondence with students where in that communication to them, he's really expounds on different parts of his teachings in ways that, well, much of which ended up in small books here and there, but which really kind of reveals the essence of the uniqueness of what he had brought into the world. And as all you know, since my awakening and since my exposure to Sri Aurobindo, after that, I recognized that what awakened me was what he had done. That he had brought in this quality of spiritual energy that I could find no reference to, that had this extraordinarily transformational impact on my body, even before I met Sri Atmananda. So there was this curiosity about the nature of this, trying to figure out how does it fit in with what other spiritual paths have taught, and so on and so forth. But I've recognized that he and the Mother Panachari succeeded in bringing this down into the physical consciousness. And here are some quotes that he put forward that I thought would enrich and clarify what is the uniqueness of the force that we bring in, that I've been calling the Satri force. But really, to kind of separate me from that, it's an incarnation force, a force that comes during periods of transition, just as the Gita points to. That it really doesn't have anything to do with me, although I took the name, but the name was in the awe of recognition of what it was when I met it in 2009. So I do want to make that clear. This is not mine. This is something for all of mankind, for the earth itself. Therefore, it's not a yoga about our own individual realization either, because that's what I realized, that what was happening wasn't about me. It was about an intent larger than mine, finding its expression in my individual self. And it's what this work is now, demonstrationally, experientially available to people who can open up to that possibility. So here is this series of quotes. It's the uniqueness of the supermental force. His words: I was putting forth a thing to be achieved that has not yet been achieved, not yet clearly visualized, even though it is the natural but still secret outcome of all the past spiritual endeavor. It is new as compared to the old yogas. I have not found this method as a whole or anything like it professed or realized in the old yogas. Sri Aurobindo taught himself Sanskrit and read all the Vedas and the Upanishads, looking to dive into and experience. And he learned the mantras and used them on himself. And he used the techniques and used them on himself. He wanted to see if the fullness of what they were pointing to in relationship to an intuition he had about what was possible that hadn't been possible before. I have not found this method. If I had, I should not have wasted my time hewing out a road and in 30 years of search and inner creation, when I could have just hastened home safely to my goal in an easy canter over the paths already blazed out, laid down, perfectly mapped, macadamized, made secure in public. He has a great sarcasm that pervades these letters, which gets you a sense of that humor that he has. Our yoga is not a retreading of old walks, but a spiritual adventure. Because its aim is not at a departure out of this world and life into heaven or nirvana, but at a change of life and existence, not as something subordinate or incidental, but as a distinct and central object. That it's a yoga for the world, not for any one individual. How did he know that back in 1915? That this time would come? Where if it wasn't for this, there would be no opportunity for intervention? It was like he was laying the groundwork for where we are now. That's what's clear to me. If there is a descent in other yogas, yet is only an incident on the way or resulting from the ascent. Being in these traditions, the ascent is the real thing. Here, the ascent is the first step, but it is means for a descent. It is the descent that brings, it is the descent of the new consciousness attained by the ascent that is the stamp and seal of this sadhana. So we're bringing something down, something we reach up to and bring down through our bodies. Let's be distinct. This force can only enter through a body that can receive it. The embodied consciousness that we human beings carry is the only means this new consciousness can come into matter, into the creation. We are the instruments. Our bodies are the instruments for the song of creation, for the call of the opportunity of existence. And that is something of the experience, as if there's a larger cry, call for a possibility to happen than our own. It's not just freedom from suffering or freedom in spiritual awakening. It's not even the middle kingdoms that have been there for ever since mankind. It's something beyond that. Because the object sought after is not an individual achievement of divine realization for the sake of the individual, something to be gained for the earth consciousness here, a consciousness not solely a super cosmic achievement. The thing to be gained also is to bring in a power of consciousness, the supermental, not yet organized or active directly in the earth nature, even in the spiritual life, but yet to be organized and made directly active. That's this work. I'm simply another reiteration of this intent, and to the extent that what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother were able to create in Pondicherry, it is simply a refinement and a clarification. For me, it's taken years and years and years to make the distinction. He spoke back in 1915. I've read these words before, maybe 10 years ago, but they didn't resonate with this now, where we are and where this work is now. Our yoga is a double movement of ascent and descent. One rises to higher and higher levels of consciousness, but at the same time, one brings down this power not only into mind and life, but even into the body. Okay, so this is 100 years old. A guideline that was spoken 100 years ago that is extraordinarily relevant now. The fundamental difference is in the teaching that there is a dynamic divine truth. That's Satchitananda. And that into the present world of ignorance, that truth can descend, create a new truth consciousness, and divinifies life. The old yogas go straight from mind to the absolute divine, regarding all dynamic existence as ignorance, illusion, or lila. When you enter the static and immutable divine truth, they say you pass out of cosmic existence. This yoga aims at the conscious union with the divine and the supermind and the transformation of the nature. He says that in the past, these things were not the imperative. The balance between matter and spirit was such that it wasn't necessary for this kind of intervention. But now, because of the imbalance where matter is so much more developed than spirit, the intervention is required. And that is why this force is being put to work. We're putting it to work. Hopefully others are putting it to work. And then one other thing that's associated with this force, the uniqueness of this force is transformation. This is the word Aurobindo created 100 years ago. Transformation, making a distinction about the nature of this spiritual force as it interfaces in the body, in matter. Transformation is a word that I brought in myself to express certain spiritual concepts and spiritual facts of the integral yoga. People are now taking them up and using them in senses which have nothing to do with the significance which I put on them. Purification of the nature by the influence of spirit is not what I mean by transformation. Purification of the system. Of the nature by the influence of the spirit is not what I mean by transformation. Purification is only part of a psychic change or a psycho-spiritual change. The word, besides, has many senses, is often given a moral or ethical meaning, which is foreign to my purpose. So it means that the spirituality, the energies that we're not accessing the supermental for the purpose of manifestation, we're bringing forward a change in the personality, in the being that was purifying it, making it more sattvic. But it was not transforming the vehicle or the structures in the vital nature or the lower mental nature. That's not a purpose. It was to bypass, to purify yourself into a transcendent state of consciousness where you no longer gave importance. You made it just the error of my personality. There was nothing to change. And this pervades even now, where the actual tangible transformation force is mingled in with the ordinary spiritual change, purification that comes. One is transcendent, one is embodied. What I mean by spiritual transformation is something dynamic, not merely liberation of the self or realization of the one, which can very well be attained without any descent. It is putting on of the spiritual consciousness, dynamic as well as static, in every part of the being, down to the subconscious, down to the deep-rooted, fundamental archetypal structures of the organization of our consciousness and our body, from that place, creating a transformation from the inside out as well as from the outside in. Okay. So I just want to make that distinction. Clearly, this is not my force. It's something I discovered, but it was already there. Everything is already there. You could say the entire spiritual path is discovering what's there. We're simply here with Aurobindo in the work, and the the incarnation force is going into the outer limits of what has been known in spiritual science previously. And this is an applied science. Aurobindo was really interested in how this could be brought into the human condition to shift the very foundational levels in such a way that the limit of what's possible for human beings could be expanded. And that's clearly what it's about. Transformation is going down into those archetypal roots of ourself that we all inherited, took on through our ancestral lineage, that piece of the collective error that would prevent mankind from going beyond the endless repetitive cycles that have gone on for mankind since it came into existence. Periods of progress and collapse in this very slow evolutionary movement. This shifts the paradigm. That is the thing that would cause the collapse. The very structures of the unmet structures of the collective archetypal human consciousness would begin to lose their hold, their grip on the awakened human being, and allow for something greater, something truer to come into existence. This is the uniqueness of this work. And there are people out there, I'm sure millions of people, who could channel this force, and they don't know they could. I'm sure that the fundamental thing that we're talking about has been here for some time. Maybe 1968 is when the mother said it's here, in a way that there was that sense it was embodied. And that once it became embodied, it would go and penetrate into that which is not yet it. It is like radioactivity. It converts that which it contacts into another radioactive element. Transformation, truth, has this ability to expand in itself within itself. And it starts converting that which it's in contact with into this greater nature. So this has been going on distinctly in the generations that have come from that period of time. And each generation is bringing a greater capacity to be a channel for this force, for this time. These next 2 years is what the estimate is of what this period would be, where we have to stop. We have to stop taking actions based on the old archetypal patterns that are currently demonstrating themselves everywhere in politics and all parts of the world where truth is losing its relevance. It's conquering and distorting and veiling the possibility that's trying to manifest in a desperate attempt to stop this shift that the collective consciousness is going through. So it's all about us. And the arc of the battle is very, very clear. And that brings us back down to here, to us, to those of you who are listening to this, what our purpose is, what our shared purpose is. And perhaps if what I'm speaking resonates with you, it's like rings, if it says like true, then you're part of this, if you know it or not. How to become more part of this is really the essence of what New Dharma is about. To bring a new Dharma, that means a new opportunity for mankind into existence. And I know in my form, it chose an architect. It chose an architect who would take the idea or the ideal and make it real. But are there others that carry the same capacity? Every artist, every poet. The only difference was the depths of the embodiment. And the nature of this force is its unrelenting in its insistence of our transformation. That if you open to this force, it starts doing what it's trying to do for the world, correcting the imbalance in you between matter and spirit. And in the process of correcting that balance, of bringing spirit into existence, it dissolves the structure of matter that obscure and obstruct its manifestation. And during that period, that transformational period, until those come to equilibrium, it can be hell. Physically, emotionally, mentally. We are all little replications of what it's trying to do for the planet. So this process of transformation can create all kinds of symptoms, nausea, restlessness. I had my daughter just share with me that all the tests that she had because she couldn't understand the process that was going on in her, even though I was telling her, this is you hanging out with us, honey. It is this, and all the doctors said, you're perfectly healthy. And this has all happened to someone on the East Coast. And so this going, thinking, surely this is something fundamental wrong and they can't find anything wrong, is one of the symptoms of this transformation because it doesn't have a physical basis. Its physical basis, it's revealing those cancers or the DNA patterns to certain conditions, bringing them to the surface to be exhausted, not to become a condition that defeats you. So they have to be tolerated. They have to be held like any emotional uproaring that would come when something that's been hidden seeks to burst into existence. It's not meant to defeat you, although it may feel like that. It's just need to be held in the process as a part of the process of this purpose. Having this context, recognizing how to hold what it takes to be a channel or instrument can give you enough objectivity, enough distance to be able to endure the process for as long as it takes. And it takes many years before the embedded structures that they took on this lifetime are dissolved enough so that then they start collapsing on their own. So that's one aspect of what we're speaking of is the transformation. But the process of the transformation is always greater access to truth, to what that lived principle of truth in our body feels like. And what does it feel like? That current of your own existence. Greater aliveness, greater immediacy, greater capacity to directly recognize truth and untruth, and greater sense of connection, relationship with those aspects of existence we couldn't be in relationship with previously. We move out of the paradigm of our separateness. We move out of the paradigm. All of us are expressions of us being able to feel this current of Satchitananda, of truth consciousness when it's in a dynamic expression, singing us. And then in our song, we create those who can hear, listen, to receive, and coming into responsibility to be the player of the song for others so that they too can sing the song. So these are tangible experiences. It's happening uniformly to everyone who is actually seriously recognizing the opportunity of this path. And that takes us down to where we are now. Because there's a couple of very important principles about this particular work and how we, those of you strongly connected to this work, are trying to create a grounding for this opportunity for the world. And this one part of it is the residential program. One part of this is this community of people living together with this shared intent in everyday life, literally leaving their life behind for periods of time, some permanently, some off and on, to be immersed in an intentional atmosphere, to ground this force in the petty, miserable, day-to-day structures that are showing up, living in a community with other people on a regular basis. We're bringing it into the human psychology. We're bringing it into the vital nature. We're bringing it into not only that, but we're bringing it into the mental understanding, the ability to understand intent, the power of your consciousness to organize your perception, to be able to shift your point of view in order to create a new relationship for yourself with existence. All that is what's happening here. Coming to responsibility for your own reactivity, getting away from believing your projections onto others as being the source of your problems. This is all making it real. Each of you aren't like Aurobindo and the mother were trying to do. We're the next reiteration of that, to bring it into the lived life. So this is a continuous unfolding of this experiment and how many actually are needed and how long people need to stay and what is its benefit. Ultimately, its greatest expression would be its replication. That what we're doing here can be replicated in other parts of the world. That we can have places where people can be engaged or live together in a day-to-day way, that they can continuously meeting that paradigm, that structure of resistance and opportunity that's coming on in your lived life. You know, I was just reading today. Every day I read a chapter of Gita, and it endlessly reveals itself, endlessly reveals itself, as does the Mother Book. Verse 318 in chapter 8, if through practice of constant contemplation, practice, and you have to work at it. You have to reach that place where the contemplation is continuous. One is linked with the Supreme Being, and his mind does not go anywhere else. He attains him. You become that. So this practice of constant contemplation is the opportunity of whatever life you're living as an arena by where you can notice you're not in constant contemplation. It's in this paradigm of being able to make real through the endless repetition of yourself coming into existence each and every day that we move into remembrance of that principle, the underlying reality that we're calling the Supreme Being. And in that way becoming a more perfect and capable instrument for the replication of the opportunity of this work. Not for yourself, not because it's so cool or great to be the Supreme Being, which it is, but so that you can serve this world, you can be useful. That's the difference with this goal. It's not just for you, it's for the whole planet, for all of mankind. So articulating this and making clear, this is just not about kumbaya, just waking up to how bad the climate change is going to be and what its consequences. This is, yes, part of it. Partially because the collective consciousness, intellect, intelligence is more developed than any other time. So yes, we can have people become aware of the facts, become aware of the science, become aware of that. And that is bringing it into that little bit that's open to it. And it's already beginning to demonstrate that even that alone is setting in motion a listening, at least in the awareness plane, the intellect human awareness plane of the crisis that is really upon us already, when may actually be already in motion irrevocably. So, but there is also this deepening, and those who can take it deeper than just understanding are those who carry this awakening as part of their birth. The young people that came in a quality of listening right from birth. And of course, they're all traumatized by the remnants of the collective ignorance the collective reactivities that come from the physical, vital, and lower mental nature. It's the nature, the price of coming into this dimension. And in that, they have been able to come to some relationship with themselves, some successfully, many not successfully. Some of the highest suicide rates are among the young people. It's because it's just, they don't have the sense of the opportunity of life. They lose access to that would remind them of their purpose for taking birth and being on the planet. It's not just the puppies and the animals and the species that are dying left and right as we speak. It's our children. And it's the despair. And it's despair that's striking out, acting out in these destructive ways in politics and in revolt and revolution and self-destructiveness. They're all evidence of a transformation that's trying to happen. It's all evidence of the cells of humanity, the individual cells of the humanity, of the body of mankind, that are in distress as this transformational process is going on. And the distress can be relieved if they can consciously align with this new consciousness. And that's this work. So one of the entry points, and it's a natural entry point, like right now, yoga, hatha yoga, physical yoga, all the practices of physical yoga are actually preparing the bodies of millions and millions and millions of people to be able to receive this. It's the foundational. Becoming conscious of your body and learning to be in that yogic orientation with your own body takes you out of the usual paradigm, which leaves the body behind and just lives in the mental or lives in the emotions or lives in the story. It makes the recognition of the body as a temple, as a vessel, as a means by which you can come into the opportunity of life. It's becoming more available everywhere. So there is a listening through that yoga. And what we've noticed, is that when we walk into communities where yoga is the foundation, there's a terrific receptivity, like the new yoga school in Amsterdam. A terrific ability to receive the uniqueness of this force, which is different than the other forces of spirituality, which are from some derivative of the God plane and lesser, what I call the middle kingdom. These are radiant principles that give us access to experiences of the subtle world that are not our own for periods of time. And they're wonderful. They lift us up. They prepare a possibility for us outside of our human embodiment, but in itself is not transformative. It is a step in the unfolding of should that be happening. But many young people are becoming seduced by the striking difference between that reality and the one that they were living in before. It relieves the despair. It relieves that sense of angst of being in a human body, in a human life. But it's not transformation, and it's not for the world, it's for each individual. So this is, however, can be a preparation. A few can see through the menagerie and the enticements that take our human needs and wants and exaggerates them into where we can imagine possibilities that our ego would never have imagined before. And then the ego lays claim to those as its own. But it fails always, because every time it tries to own it, it disappears. It tries to grab it as its own. It can't hang on to it because it's not yours. It's not yet yours. You can only own that when you've come to something beyond that. And then of course it's yours. But it's not something you grab onto. So this understanding of this transition is also starting to happen. Part of it has to do with the understanding of the teaching and the recognition of what happens with you when you open up to this supermental force, when you open up to this incarnation force. And that's how we're demonstrating what the opportunity of this work is, as different than what might be out there, what is out there, at least not with many spiritual teachers, but with a few spiritual teachers who can transmit that Shakti, to get a hint of what it is beyond that, beyond the Vedas, beyond the Upanishads, and become relevant, become useful to serve in this current transition in a meaningful way. And then the second, besides the residential program and this coming into constant remembrance, is clearly the remote programs and the world peace meditation. These are, you could say, means by which we can broadcast into the collective consciousness through the internet, through social media, through my talks, through the meditation itself, this opportunity, this incarnation force. And this is why we're starting, hopefully next month, December, so not far away, tomorrow, the construction of the Satsang Mandir. So the permits are just almost complete. There's just a few corrections the draftsman has to get in. Permit will be issued. They've already done some evaluation of the site work, and they would come out and start grading when and if the weather permits
Snow
them.
goes away.
But it's you all who are here see the construction starting to occur bit by bit as they lay in the infrastructure and foundations and do the grading and the rest of it. And then they'll start with the construction. It's my wish, it's all I can have is a wish, is that it can be done before the end of 2020. And in 2020, we would have a Satsang Mandir. That means a temple for truth. I like to think of it as a broadcast station, where wherever people are from this place can be transmitted through this world peace interventions, this consciousness, such that we can do all that we can in terms of allowing mankind to break through this period of deep darkness and obscurity and resistance showing up in the collective consciousness. It can pierce through that more quickly so that we can take effective action to start correcting using the technologies and capacities we already have to do the best we can to put the brakes on the car that's careening madly over the cliff of the possibility of mankind. So this residential program and this means by which we can gather physically and virtually together and to begin to focus on bringing in this supermental consciousness into the world. Okay, that's what I wanted to speak to. This is what I wanted to share. Wherever you are, this can be done. Not everyone's going to be able to come to Washoe or come to Washoe for very long. Wherever you are can become the basis by which this can be propagated into other areas. We're in Western Europe. It should go to Eastern Europe. It should go wherever darkness is. It should go to all parts of the world that it hasn't penetrated yet. It should become accessible because you don't need to be educated. You just need to be open. You just need to have a piece of you that can receive this. And that piece itself can anchor itself and make room for itself into each person who can receive it. And then it can grow. Okay, so now I'll open up to any of you who'd like to share or bring forward what you have to say. And we'll see where this goes from this point. Satsang, you have anything to say on this?
No, it's their turn.
Okay.
Always have something to say.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. You haven't asked Das how many people we have.
Yeah, how many do we have?
77.
All right.
Okay, this is a message for the world.
That's great. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is so inspiring. I, hardly know how to
I can see you bouncing.
I want to ask a question about the embodied experience
Yeah.
of the incarnation force, because it feels more honoring when I can know that it's here and recognize it. And I know it's about paying attention, but I also need to know how to recognize.
Okay, so take this moment.
Can I?
Yes.
I've heard you say in the past there's a dynamic aspect and a more static aspect. And my experience of the dynamic aspect is like when we were in Stockholm and when we were ready to do the GTP immersion, the part that I led, all of a sudden it's about to start in here, literally a descent of this energy that's extremely different. And of course I recognize that.
Good.
The more, not passive, what did you say?
Dynamic
And static.
and static.
That's what I want to ask you about.
Okay.
Like right now, today. So there's this little love flame that's continually there. But it's almost like in front of that or surrounding that, there is this energy that I don't try to choose a word to describe it. It's like it has its own word that it wants to be described as. And it is potential. It's possibility. Now, lots of times I feel energy and it doesn't have that quality.
Yeah.
But when it does,
That's the actualizing force of the incarnation.
so it is the incarnation.
That's the embodied. What it is. It's like a tiger or a panther sitting on a rock, waiting for the prey. It has this poise and this energy for immediate action. This capacity for a vigorous expression, but it's present. It's a potentiality. And it's a kind of a vibrant sense of the possibility that's here, but has not yet become actualized. And that what it does is, in that state, when life shows up, this force expresses itself with a recognition, with an understanding of what's showing up, with an action, something to be said, something to do, appropriate in response to that's what's showing up in that space. Correct? Mm-hmm. So the nature of that is a sense of power, or you used the word agency, this capacity to come into existence in total responsibility, or in great responsibility, ability to respond of what your role is, with an intent so that that which it is can manifest. So it is an inherent Satchitananda compressed into this supermental force, this incarnation force, waiting to leap out in one expression or the other, one of which is the Ananda, the love, the endless compassion for the condition of suffering. Another of which is this clarity and this languaging that brings this startling recognition of the nature of what it is, of the opportunity that's showing. And then there's truth, which of course is what brings us to the immediacy of this now, always, this now, here, this moment. In this moment, then there is recognition, understanding, clarity, and love. All there. That's when you've been able to align with it enough, when you've trained your system, when you've observed the process of your own transformation, then this becomes your constant contemplation. How long does it take? It's proportional to whatever we inherited. For some, it's relatively short, just a few years. For others, it may go on and on and on to some extent for their whole life. But the principle is always seeking to its full expression, to as much as possible. But it won't do more than you are willing. If you don't want it to happen, it will retreat because you're the authority of your body. You're in control. Now, if you open up and say, please do what you will, well, then it'll come in. But you say, okay, enough, it'll stop. Because it'll always honor you because you are the source of it, even though you don't know yet. So this is it's always an opportunity. It's not a requirement. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about being good enough. Matter of fact, experience will always be, I'm not good enough, if that's your orientation, because you're always being expanded beyond what you've known yourself to be. You can't end up staying satisfied with yourself. You can't stay satisfied with the adaptation you've come to, the compromise you've made between matter and spirit that's allowed you to tolerate being where you are. So that sense of dissatisfaction or not good enough can be, like dejection, a constant companion in the unfolding of this opportunity that's not ordinary spirituality, which is a low bar relative to this, of what's possible. Okay? Good?
Very good. Thank you.
Wanted to check with you to see if what I experience
Good.
of this incarnation force is actually true.
All right.
2 years ago, when you came back from Rishikesh, you described an experience that you had when you were going across the
Right.
river, and this tremendous force came upon you. That's what I feel sometimes. And it's pretty powerful. And I'm wondering if it's just, is it my body reacting to the power or the force that...
So it is, of course, a derivative of the same force. This is the Shakti. This is the big, vital Shakti, life force. It's the life force, the mother, the force of the mother that brought this world into existence, this huge, endlessly capable, creative force that comes from the vital plane. And it is certainly, as a reference point, an extraordinary experience when it comes, but it is still of this plane. It is still, the source is still coming from that mother manifesting principle of the higher vital. But it is your access point, it's your entry point, and through that is the supermental. What the supermental probably shows up for you is this, your heart palpitations. It's your physical discomforts, your inability to sleep, the endless not good enough. It is just the opposite. It's not this wondrous, magnificent, vast life force. It's this, if you experience it directly, crushing, defeating, collapsing as it comes in. So that might be one way of understanding the difference between the two, and also the readiness of our system. So being able to receive that force is what will develop your body to be more capable of converting what is otherwise a limiting experience into a glory beyond your words, beyond all creation.
Well, I can feel the glory, the utter awesomeness of...
Your higher psychic knows everything I'm speaking of. It's your body that's still struggling.
Well, my body kind of senses it because it, like right now, there's just this little buzz going on, and
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
feeling
That's it.
a little fragile because I can't.
You're holding on to yourself.
Yeah.
So you don't explode in 1,000 different pieces like broken glass. Okay, so that also is the evidence of a system's ability to receive the force, to the capacity of the system. So the awareness can receive it. You've been with me all along, but the frustration is the body has still got a quantum of trauma and adaptation that has to be healed. But from this place too, Karen serves. She carries the love and the light and the truth and her humility. These are all evidences of the manifestation of truth consciousness. It brings us into that as much as we're capable, and that's all we could hope for ourselves. We each have our own unique path. We each have our own trajectory. We each carry a piece of the collective error, and the denser the error, the harder it is to be able to fully align with the truth. So it's some carry the burden of a burden of their ancestry and their inherited piece of the misery, and you chose to come here to do this work. That entire structure of the male-dominated authority control in a feminine form, it's just a tremendous burden. In order to be able to come to her own authority in relationship with that, she needs the Ganji. She needs the entire current of mother to come to her, to strengthen her capacity, to heal the damage her children have caused. And that is who you are.
So when I go to Boise, just the constant remembrance and pulling back from the outer world to reconnect with this
Every pleasure,
constant remembrance.
every happy relationship, every time you walk outside and you're in nature, you're in remembrance. At the opportunity of yourself and existence and the joy of being you in life is remembrance. Every time you feel the sense of the possibility that life is and that you are and that others are, that's it.
That's it. That's my work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth.
Hello. I wanted to just speak into the incarnation force because I feel so aligned with the incarnation force. There isn't anything in me that, I'm here for the world. So
You've always been here for the world.
I always have been. So that's clear. But there's some in this part of me here. There's a burning, but I feel like I'm on like it is a new beginning in some way. I'm very fragile in this moment.
Yeah, I got it.
But it was feeling to me before I left that it's like looking out a new window. And it's inner and it's outer. Like, I don't have any desire to tell you all the projects I want to do.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
And I only want them to come from whatever the incarnation force. Like I feel like I'm an enlisted soldier.
Yeah. You're enlisted. You're just not in the battle yet. So I can feel your system. It's like fractured, like it's a opening, and through the lens of like something, a bubble's been popped. It's expanded, so it's infused with your idealism still, and your hopes, and the part of your human being that was motivated to bring that ideal into life, and this true new force, this true incarnation force. So there's this intermingling, coloring, shaping that's right now quite expanded and fragile, but it's also quite excited and sense of the possibility.
Right.
So that process just needs to complete. It's like an explosion in slow motion. And then all the little pieces and fragments get dissipated. And then what's left? and all that's gone. So that's your life. That's the life you lived, where the pieces of you weren't dark in the same way it is with other people, but it was full of determination and wanting and striving to bring this ideal, this possibility into existence. So that part of you is what still needs to dissipate.
Yeah. But I can sense that it is,
Yeah.
which is a surprise.
Yeah. Well, now that's great. Well, that's because those who come for the world are by design less bound by the needs and the wants and the clinging, even though they may be there. They don't have the same convincing reality as someone who's given their life over to serve the world in some way. So it more readily can move. So, but you also carry the entire ancestral conditioning in your mother and your father and that entire ancestor, whatever that was. And often our idealism is a compensation for the non-idealism, the selfish, greedy, righteous, judgmental qualities of the higher mental that human beings carry. So, but okay. And your sister, did she pass? Okay. When? What was the day?
I got on a plane yesterday from DC to Denver, and she passed when I was on that plane. And
I was going to tell you she won't pass as long as you're with her.
yeah, well, I knew to leave, and I can tell you very briefly. It's quite beautiful. The hospice nurse told her 9 children yesterday that moms have a hard time leaving, and maybe they wanted to think about having an early Christmas. So they had an Advent ceremony with her yesterday. They lit candles. They read the Bible story.
Was she conscious while that was happening?
Fully conscious.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
And then they sang to her. And then they said goodbye from the youngest to the oldest.
Oh, my.
And
What's
her
the
twin
children?
was with her when she,
What age? What age the children?
15 to 27.
Got it.
And they did a fabulous job. They were all very strong and courageous.
And your sister had a twin.
She had a twin, and her twin was the last one in the lineup to say goodbye. And Katie passed when her twin was with her, coaching her. It was really something.
That is something. High soul.
And the visualization that you gave me to do, I did it during the week because I knew I wasn't going to be there to know that she was going to pass. And when I was on my flight, I just said, okay. And I went deep inside. I connected my heart to her, sent this ray of light and love. And then I imagined her leaping into the heavens, but it was very different than what I had done before. And I realized yesterday when I was on the plane that when I imagined her leaping, I could feel her leaping. I could feel the joy of her earlier in the week leaping and all of her colors. She was into purple. But she was only going to the earth sphere. And on the plane, she went out beyond where I go with you, to the incarnation stuff. And I just felt enveloped by peace. And I didn't want to believe that. I just thought, well, wow, that's powerful. Maybe I did it right this time. And it wasn't until we landed and I turned my phone on that I got the text that she
was actually, you went with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the experience. That's what happened when my son passed for me too. So it's the evidence of our transition in your own experience to the transition of another, because you can actually go with them and you can feel the freedom, the peace that comes.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Someone else? Anyone asking
I
online?
have someone who's written in a question I could read.
Okay.
Yes, let's do that.
So this was written by Gary, and she asked, what might impede my expressing the life force? Do I need to exercise my free will to realize it, or would it happen organically?
That sense of free will is the organic in you. So when you do what you want to do, in terms of the life force, the desire force, as we develop as human beings, this needs to have had its time on the stage enough that we can get a sense of the success and failures that inevitably happen when you're coming into existence through your desire. It is an aspect of what the human ego values as the most precious part of its life, is its life force. And if it hasn't had enough time on the stage, then it feels frustrated and angry and resentful. And maybe there's fear, or maybe there's conditionings of their upbringing that has not allowed that life force to come into existence. So when someone comes to the spiritual path and the life force introduces itself, but because it is not the highest force, it's still within the domain of ego and still in the domain of where we could lose our access to our full possibility, then it's so enticing. And the ego so wants to ride on that current, then it can get enticed into that dimension, and then the ego takes residence in that higher life force. Now, I know that I was 50 when this happened, and I was quite a creative person, especially when I was young, and that the life force was really a very positive expression in my life. It was always positive. It was always looking to adventure and explore and discover and to express and to create. But I do know that many, many people, the life force is tangled up with need and want and addiction, having its way to gain power, to gain control, so on and so forth. So the vital is a very mixed force. So it itself is not the truth. The truth you can always know when you find that place of silence and stillness within yourself that is whole and complete and needs nothing other than to be right there, right then. So that is the best hint. The life force can take you this way and that way, especially when you awaken spiritually, it can take you this way and that way. But if you know that the goal is just so simple, so relaxed, so open, so at peace, part of yourself, then you can not get diverted. You can enjoy it and not get overtaken. But you have to find that central place of emptiness, that central quality of yourself satisfied with itself as it is. And that's your measure. That's what you're looking for ultimately. And that's what lives from one life to the other life to the other life. That's the eternal part of you that doesn't have an agenda, doesn't have a need, doesn't have fear or anxiety, doesn't have addiction or destructive behaviors. It's at peace with the truth of itself. Then the vital can become a means, a positive means, to come into existence both as an individual. That's why meditation is so enhancing in our formation as individuals coming into life, but also on the spiritual path, where we don't get so caught up with what may show up. We may not make conclusions prematurely on what we've attained. It has its essential quality as humility. Therefore, not needing anything but itself. So that humility and that emptiness is what will let you know what is true or not true, and whatever is arising, and it's going to be proportional at your stage of life. If you're young, the vital life is part of your life. If there is these drives, positive drives, the positive drives can serve you spiritually when the awakening is ready to mature. To know what it is, to know your own self as ego, as well as to know yourself as spirit, to know yourself as matter, as the person, and to know yourself as this eternal and changing reality. That's the ultimate. The more you know yourself as the eternal and changing reality, the more you know yourself as a person, the more you see its capacities and its limitations. Not just see, you experience, you recognize what in you can be aligned with truth and what in you can't, what in you can love and what in you can't, or can't hang on to it, or can't create it, bring it into existence. So there you go. That's the answer to that question.
She says that. There's one other question I could read.
Okay.
Let's see if there's someone in the room though.
Well, it just had 3 people in the room already.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this was written by Yama, and she said, you spoke of Apana going up towards the towards the energy coming down. I was taught that Apana should only move downward, as it is the wind that facilitates dedication. I was taught if it goes up, it causes mental distress, even illness. A teacher who does biennial cleanses to bring the Apana down, which creates clarity, peaceful mind, groundedness, which will then allow energy to rise. So she's saying she's now confused.
Yeah, it's a problem when you already have existing knowledge. Too much existing knowledge gets in the way of the simple truth. But your simple truth is your own experience. And that is really the thing you should know. For me, of course, when I first got exposed to spiritual teachings, I followed the technique exactly. And then after my attainment went beyond the energy the technique evoked, then I could say, well, I only need to do this, or someone only needs to do this. And they don't need to do this particular structure of how it unfolds. But it is tangibly for me that the Apana is the force, potential force of the Kundalini, not yet manifest, seeking to manifest, to rise up from below to above. And why most people avoid it is it sets in motion a form of transformation, of realignment of the ignorance in the system as it pushes up, and therefore it pushes up what's hidden in the lower nature into the surface personality. And a person with Kundalini awakening, or with something like ayahuasca, are having very disturbing experiences because it's pushing up what's hidden. And that's the nature of this force. So if you don't have an intelligence, which would come from above, you don't have some greater understanding of what it is, it could create madness, it could create, especially in the old traditions where there wasn't psychological understanding of the human system. So they say, okay, to just avoid the shit, just bring in the high, 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 and stay high. And that's what Aurobindo was talking about. Stay transcendent. Leave this whole thing, it's an illusion anyway. Right? What you are is this thing that doesn't have a body, doesn't have emotions, doesn't have a story, doesn't have hopes or wishes. So this is a bypass, effectively, as we know now. So in the technique, World Peace Meditation, I speak of the Apana and the Prana. The Prana, of course, is the air that we bring in, the energy that's inherent in the field that we live in. Prana is an expression of Brahman, that when we inhale Brahman through the atmosphere, we take in the universal into our body when we inhale, and we take it all the way down to the third chakra. It ignites the flame that ignites us, the Agni, the center of the person. That is the activating force. It's like your Energizer battery is your Agni right there in the gut. And that to the Apana that lies hidden in your first chakra is quite attractive. And if it stays there long enough, it will strive to come to it because it wants to come into existence. The Apana comes from the earth, it comes from the Asat, it comes from the evolutionary urge of consciousness to come into existence, into the fullness of itself, and to wake up to itself. So it always comes from the biological DNA, cellular structure, the habits of the ancestral weave that we took on when we had a body that allows bodies. So the Apana is trying to wake up when that prana is there. And it pulls it up. And if you can hold it long enough and practice it long enough, some tentacles of that Apana can come and join the prana that's being held there. And then when you exhale, it helps pull that Apana into existence and expand itself. Eventually, when the Apana can reach the prana, then peace happens. Because the Apana has come into existence. Its striving for a moment is relieved. It exists now with the prana. It can't exist by itself. So it is a creation story. It's a coming into existence story. And when the body can receive that, the body starts awakening. There's that inside out. And there's no doubt about it. Kundalini Shakti brings us into the God plane. It brings us into the middle kingdom. It loosens the clinch of the physicality of the world and our mind and the senses and death and life and suffering and want and failure and desire. It loosens the weave of that fabric, and we expand to a more universal expression of that fabric, which is more positive, carries more possibility, but it also carries its own error, its own darkness, its own aspect of the expanded apana or asat. So this is the clarification on what that may be for that part of your confusion, but I know you have a bit of an addiction to your confusion. The mind has an addiction to confusion. The mind doesn't want to wake up, and if it does wake up, it wants to make sure it's the right way so it doesn't lose. That's the nature of mind. It's always calculating if it's safe or not, if it's going to work or not. And as long as mind is determining, you'll be stuck in what the Gita says is doubt. And if you have doubt, it's one of the greatest obstacles on the spiritual path, because you're listening to your mind. You're not listening to your own experience. You're not listening to your heart. You're not listening to your body. We all could learn that lesson. Because I assure you that no matter how many times I've explained, people still show up confused. How many times I talk to them individually and I point it out to them, give them 2 or 3 days, back into confusion. Because you're unwittingly empowering that structure in you that doubts, that is suspicious, that's wary, that has fear and desire. And we can't go far. We'll only go as far as it'll let us, until we come into a greater authority with that silence and stillness. And the more we can come into constant remembrance with that quality of us, the less doubt or confusion there will be. The mind is not going to be able to figure this out. It's the last one to know. And even then, the only reason the mind comes to knowing is it gives up trying to know. Okay, there you go. Gita.
Thank you.
I didn't know how powerful a name could be.
So Sharon has got a new name. Everybody who's watching her, and she is now Gita, the song.
I wanted to speak about the residential program.
Okay.
Oh, as you were speaking, thank you for those introductory remarks. It was just so powerful. Transformation. You have created a place here for transformation 24/7, 365 days a year. I've been a resident almost 2 years, and I visited here for 4. And I was thinking about when I first came, it was so powerful because every conversation I had was purposeful. That was my biggest takeaway when I left, because whether I was talking to someone in the house or after a satsang or in the car going to satsang, every conversation was powerful. And that has just been so amazing. I remember a personal experience when I was triggered by something in the house when I was staying here just visiting. The house manager spoke to me and just said something about perhaps you're frozen. And I went into deep diving into the structure right there and opened up something from infancy, which has been with me forever. And that's the opportunity, I think, of
Constantly revealing what is hidden.
yes, in here, because your presence is so, it just permeates the whole center. The incarnation force is here. And so it's truly like, you're bumping up against yourself no matter what you do, no matter where you go. And I remember saying too in a group when I first came, when I started living here, it is just every moment is that opportunity, because you're never out of the vortex. You're never out of the vessel. So it's just a constant remembrance.
It's very good. I mean, the nature of a commitment to come to live here is it carries with it a very powerful intent. Because that intent is you willing to give your life over to be here. And that intent is there with you, even if you're not in remembrance of that intent. So it's not just life force, it's what you bring in your commitment and your willingness to be here in this process that enhances your ability to be in constant remembrance with the unfolding of what it is that's still hidden in order to convert it into something that can serve and be useful. So clearly that's a good way to language what it is. And it is experience. It hasn't always been the experience of people in the residential program, because then things come up, it gets projected, and then our agreement starts being built in different pockets about different points of view, and then people would just leave because they couldn't make the full transition. But it'll also, I recognize that me bringing in the force is not enough unless there's collaborators that can make it lived and real. That what has happened since that time is that you're now collaborating in and holding thereby the intent that has been brought on. So the incarnation force has landed and you're holding it. And that is what the residential program is. That is why it's needed, that we can't ever lose this piece. Because when I come here, then the base is already prepared. When I travel, I have to create the base wherever I go. In some cases, the base is being built, but it's not like here. So that's the thing that I'm seeking for us to do, is bring a place of listening. Then that becomes a Satya Mandir, a temple for truth. That becomes a temple for the incarnation force to land. Okay.
And well, there's just a couple more things. Okay. One is that when the challenges do come, and I know if I can just remember, to look within and see what the match is, it's just so important.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Coming a recognition that this is my experience, disregarding the obvious evidence that somebody else did this to me, come to that which is not so obvious that maybe I had something to do with it. That is really what the personal responsibility, and that is one of the essential capacities to be able to stay here for very long. Because it's going to want to start projecting, it's going to want to start doing its own thing in its own way, and being able to come to responsibility for that is the challenge in being here.
As a house manager too, I've received so many calls through emails basically, asking about exactly the way this is laid out. So I don't know if you'd like to maybe address that, or if you want me to, that there are houses that we live in. It's not a one big compound.
Yeah. Okay.
So
not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay.
But the uniqueness of anyone who's feeling the call to come to stay, I invite you to do so. Even if it's for a weekend or for a week or 10 days, because you really can't know till you get here, and it's good that you don't know.
Well, also, I think you need to be clear. People can't just show up on the doorstep.
That's right.
To come to Washoe Valley for a long period of time is a long process.
There is a preparation, and then we look at it, and it's reciprocal. It's what you're feeling to do, and what one of us here are seeing for that, how you can step in. It's just because we want to honor the capacity as well as the seeking, because the seeking is often greater than the capacity. And you come forward and learn what it's like to expand your capacity, and that usually determines if you can stay here or not. We don't determine it usually, as people mostly want to. That's it. I got enough. I'm going. And so that whole play between the aspiration and true capacity, this is where you find out how real that is, how true. I mean, the aspiration is always true, but its ability to become part of your life, to be lived, that's the capacity development. And what is the development? Is being with parts of ourselves and others that we don't want to be with. So in this context, the benefit of that isn't just being able to be neutral. It's that you come into relationship with yourself and others in a way you never thought was possible. It becomes a capacity to hold, to be, and to express that possibility that each of us carry with each other in an intention, a common shared intentional environment. So, you know what? We're trying to teach a new Dharma. Therefore, we have to demonstrate it. This residential program is the demonstration project, which then can be replicated. So anyone who comes here with a sincerity can come and at some point reach a capacity that they can bring this possibility back to their home, back to their country, back to where they are, and create it for themselves, among themselves.
Well, that's the purpose of why we created the global training program, is that people could come to India and come here and immerse themselves in what we loosely call a structure, and then have the capacity to take that back home.
Replicate. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gita.
Satri,
Yeah.
you should be wrapping up.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the winter program.
Okay. You want to
So
speak to it?
well, I'm going to let you speak to it first, why you feel people should come. And then we're going to invite a couple of people to come up and talk about their experience.
All right, very good. Well, the advantage of the winter program is that my energy isn't going to obscure your own energy as much.
And what it means is we're not here.
We're not physically here. Now, there is an acceleration when I'm here, and that's also can be miserable. But if I'm not here, then it's more your energy. And what's happening is when people come who are staying here for long periods, they grow in their capacity during the winter programs or the periods when we're gone, in their ability to support the unfolding of the opportunity of this incarnation force coming through them to everyone who is coming and participating. You also get the opportunity to come out of your life and be in a place where the intense activity that happens in the residential program when we're here is not quite as intense. So there's more time to strengthen that silence and stillness within yourself in this, high altitude desert in the midst of winter, which has its own magnificence with the mountains and the quietness, the silence that pervades this entire area. And that time to get away from yourself and the life that you've built wherever you're living, to take refuge in another place to stand, where you can bring your intent to move into a more constant remembrance with that divine nature. So those are the reasons to come interveningly. And I don't believe that because it's transformation can only happen when people are with me. It's my direct experience that when people come with me, they often get the benefit when they go away. They begin to integrate what has happened. Because when you're in the midst of the surgery, it's not possible to know what the outcome will be. You can get away, go to recovery, and integrate it. And that's when it gets stable, what has come. It becomes yours. So this is coming and going as part of my recognition that the constant bombardment can't be absorbed. This is why I've learned to ask questions in my talks rather than just speak. Because when people share, there's a place where you can kind of integrate what has been spoken in a way that's meaningful for you. So coming here is a time to move into relationship with that which is most meaningful to you. It is the most meaningful thing you could possibly find, is that quality of yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically what we're talking about today is that the periods of time when Satri and I leave Washoe Valley, which the next one will happen on Tuesday, we leave Wednesday, We will not return until March. During that period of time, there are people who stay here in residence. They stay here to hold the space of what we're doing so that it doesn't get lost. And so we use this as an opportunity to invite other people to come in and visit at the center. It's a great time to come. If you love snow and you love mountains, this is definitely the place to be. And it doesn't snow all the time, but it does snow. And we run regular scheduled programs. And while we're in India, the residents here also collaborate and tie in to us in India. So when we're running a program, you guys come into the programs with us. So there's Sat weekends in India, there's an intensive, and there's regular Satsangs. And all of those are available to those who are staying here. So I'd like to invite first Erica to come up, and then Gita will come up to talk about what it was like for them to be here. Somebody other than Satri. Thank you, Erica. And you have to look over there. She is prepared. It's perfectly
I
fine.
sit next to you.
You can't look at him.
My mind will not work. Okay.
Put your mind outside yourself. That's the art of it.
There's 77 people in that little machine. Oh, now 88.
Oh, shit.
We are real here. Good for you.
I have some notes. I'm not going to read all of this, but I did want to take a little time just to reflect, because I do feel that this is very important. It's not it's light, but it's not light. And there is a very great importance in supporting the program here when Satri and Satchamai are out abroad. So let's see what I wrote. Okay. All right, I'll start somewhere in the middle. Those who come to Washoe Valley Center historically have come to be with Satri in his radiance. Yet there is an opportunity here, which some might not be aware of, when he is gone, and one comes to the community, the sweetness of the Sangha is something one can relish. That sweetness is the substance of transformation. As more of us gather here while Satri takes his work abroad, this energy gathers, reinforcing and nourishing our efforts in this endeavor and changing us forever, increasing our capacity to be more useful. It's a win-win situation. When Satri, that means when Satri is here, there is transformation, and when he is gone, there is transformation. It never stops. And this, I believe, has been Satri's intent, or at least a piece of it. In the case of Washoe Valley Center, that it is an energetic hub where those who come to it, whether Satri is there or not, are nourished, reinforced, and changed forever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Nicely said.
Okay, Gita, your turn.
I got my notes too.
So one of the things that Erica said, I think that is just so important is that, the energy is here, whether or not Satri and Satchamai are here. It wasn't always that way. Literally 3 years ago, I would not make my reservation to come during the summer unless I knew they were here. So I've seen the transformation. I've seen the changes that have taken place because the people here are so committed, and the people holding the space are so aligned with Satri and Satchamai that they bring that force in. And so it's just so very powerful. The other aspect of this that many of us spoke to last year when we were here. There was, probably 7 or 8 of us for most of the winter, is that it's so intimate. It's like a small group. It's like a small group that continues for your weekend or for your week or for your 10 days, however long you can come. And once you get here, there's no hotel problems. There's no transportational issues. You're just here and you're immersed in it. And in every house, there's a house manager that holds the space. There's an opportunity for you to really dive deep and be in your own process. But yet there's a full program going on here too. The talking stick, the group inquiries, the world peace meditations, the book studies. So it's just a very complete program.
Sharon,
I think
so.
that's
Tina,
it.
what is your own experience though? What was your sense of it without the notes?
When I was here last year,
Yeah, when you were here. 'Cause-
Satyapriya and I actually would speak about it because it was so small. It was so intimate. And for myself, I got to know the people that were here, that were so compassionate, that I was just able to really open up, I think, in deeper ways than you can do when you're on Crowdcast with 88 people. Or in a room with 35 people. And this is not only, well, it's my experience, but it's the experience of so many people. They spoke about that last year. That really is an opportunity to open up. And the energy is just so powerful. It allows for that deep dive and that transformational experience of really shifting things.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Did anyone else here want to talk about it? Share any of their experience? Karen, did you feel to come up or are you okay?
I can come up and say it.
All right, and woo!
Just addressing this specifically, I've been to India with you twice. I stayed home once and I'm staying home this time. So I will have had 2 experiences of both. It's amazing here. In 2018, I was here for the winter. It was a very small group. I loved it. India is amazing. Being here is amazing. I mean, yeah.
All right. That's great, Anne. Oh, come on, Karen. Awesome. Good.
Well, I've lived here through 2.5 winters. Spent the whole time last winter. There was quite a bit of snow then. We actually got snowed in, some of us, and we had to use we call it the B-52. It's the B-42, Saraswati's 4-wheel drive. One person would pick people up at the different houses so we could actually meet for our small groups. But when I was stuck, I was snowed in. I was snowed in at Chipmunk. Satri speaks of the peace and the quietude. The view from the window there, you could see all of Lake Washoe. You could see the mountains surrounding Lake Tahoe. It was so serene and the most quiet quiet environment that I've ever lived in. And at night, the coyotes come out in the wintertime and they start singing their song. I used to be disturbed by it, but now I just relish every time I hear them making their noise at night, and they're really active in the winter. So it's just the wonder of the setting and the wildlife and the sweetness of the connection, because we got to see each other at least every other day in a small group, and you get to know people very intimately and learn their process, and just I learned a lot from just being with other people and listening to their process and saying, aha, that's me too. And And we did things like we read the Gita, your book, Satri Gita Revealed, and every week we did a chapter, and it was just a really incredible way to dive into the Gita in very profound ways. So
Okay.
it was a wonderful experience. You won't regret it if you come here for the winter.
Karen, thank you. So to wrap it up, what I'd like to say is that,
Wait, Paul?
Paul, did you want to?
Can I say goodbye?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me finish this
Okay.
and then you can come up. Okay. Because we're going to just talk about the wrapping up of the winter program. So what we'll be doing is it will be posted and sent out to everybody on the mailing list. So as soon as all the information is available, you will receive it. So if you're interested in getting some more information, just send a message to newdharma@gmail.com and it will get forwarded to the right person. So I hope we see you here. All right.
Or not see you there.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you say that, right? We don't
Now
have
I'm
the right
turning back
words.
over to you.
Okay, so, Paul, I'll give you a moment. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to share this moment, especially to the 77 people out there.
80.
88.
88.
Don't leave anybody out.
Oh, no. To some, I'm saying till we meet again. To others, I'm saying goodbye. To everybody, I'm saying thank you. To the universe, thanks for this moment. And yes, I haven't been here for winter, but I've been here all fall, and it was a small group, and it was a wonderful group. So there's a time and a place, I feel, for everything. All things must pass. I've learned a lot, but it's not here. I've learned a lot elsewhere. And to use the words of a good friend of mine, hopefully we'll all meet downriver. Thank you.
We all end up in the same ocean. Because we never left it, in fact. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you,
All
Paul.
right. Fare thee well. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about what's already happening in terms of what's being created. Because as I shared with the new yoga school in Amsterdam, that something actually is manifesting that is its own variation of what we are creating here. That is, it's a landing for this incarnation force. This is also happening in Sweden in a number of locations. It is organizing. It's coming into a place where it's possible to be a landing place for this incarnation force. India carries the potential for that, as also because we've been going there consistently to the same location again and again. So there are the idea that I always have felt that these three locations would be sufficient to become a basis to hold, to be the foundation for the world work, expanding from that point. We'll see. Another center may arise. Hopefully multiple centers will arise. But the difference was clear this time when we went to Europe, that we were being received in a way that was taking it to the next level. And I imagine next year, so will continue, so that there is this shared intention for those in Europe and ourselves here to create this possibility for mankind. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I do sense that there's enough articulation that what can happen now, what needs to happen now, is more people being able to access this incarnation force. And these world peace meditations are the way to train even new people to be able to be channels for this force into the collective environment, even if it's not something they're fully aware of. As the tool, the structure by which we can do the intervention at the level that it needs to occur, consciously, collaboratively, intentionally, in the recognition of the catastrophe, the crisis that we are in, that we can align ourselves with the purpose, with a purposeful orientation, where on a regular basis we collectively can join together and continue to bring in this incarnation force again and again and again on a regular basis. So 2020 is the beginning of that intentionality. And once the Satya Madhira is complete, it'll be a continuous process, a regular process by which these will be happening, connecting with people worldwide. So this is where it's going. Okay, well, I think we're there. Thank you all. All right, and thank you all for your partnership. My heart is just in fullness and in recognition of the vastness of what we're creating, bringing into existence. Co-creating is really the right word. I'm not doing it. No one of us is doing this. It's all of us together. It is in response to the cry of the world. And all of us who are here are responding to the mother's cry, to us, help her, help us. Okay. All glory to Supreme. May truth manifest. Namaste.
Namaste.
All right, let's just take a few minutes of silence. My love and blessings go to all of you. Celebrate your life. Thank you.